Rand Fishkin is a serial entrepreneur, marketer, former SEO guru, and online content legend. In 2004, he created the SEO Moz blog, which became the world's most popular community and content resource for search marketers. Rand is the founder of two tech companies, including the SEO software Moz, and most recently SparkToro, a market research and audience intelligence software. Rand is well known for his popular Whitheboard Friday series, a video series about SEO, watched by tens of thousands of marketers each week. He's a keynote speaker at marketing conferences around the world and the author of 3 books, including The Art of SEO, Inbound Marketing and SEO, and most recently Lost and Founder, a painfully honest field guide to the startup world. Rand is my guest at Marketing Leaders.
Yeah, sure. So, as you mentioned, I dropped out of college in 2001, so a long time ago now, and started working with my mom, Jillian, who was my co-founder at Moz. And so initially it was a consulting business, and then it turned into a software company, and I became the CEO. We raised a bunch of venture capital. I was CEO there for 7 years, and then stepped down from the role and left the company a few years later and started this new one, SparkToro, which is sort of uses an indie funding model and is not in the SEO software space like Moz was. SparkToro helps with audience research and market research. And we launched this company publicly, our product publicly a year ago last week. So it's been live for a year. You mentioned I wrote a book, which you can find on the shelf behind me, Lost and Founder.
I'm going to show it deeply afterwards, but I have it on the side because I have quote to read. So, but trust me, we're going to go back on this one.
Yeah. And I had a lot of challenging, frustrating mistakes that I made at Moz that I'm hoping I can learn from and evolve from, but I didn't want to be the only beneficiary of that. And so Lost and Founder is sort of this hopeful attempt to make a lot of those struggles transparent and help a lot of other folks as well.
Startups mostly. Yeah,
startups, but businesses of all kinds. A lot of agency owners have read it. A lot of
consultants have read it.
Consultants, exactly.
Yeah,
folks who
for
are
sure.
in a small business that's not necessarily what you might call a startup, for sure.
No, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think a few factors are at play, right? SEO, when I started Moz, was viewed as this very black hat, spammy, manipulative, sort of problematic space. Most professional marketers, marketing teams, companies wouldn't invest in it at all. Marketing agencies didn't have anyone who did SEO. Huge Fortune 500s had nobody who did SEO. They thought it was beneath them, right? They thought it was a bad thing to do SEO.
Even dangerous, maybe.
Yeah, dangerous or just sketchy and spammy and manipulative, and those people aren't real marketers, all that kind of stuff, right? It really took until, I would say, gosh, maybe 2012, 2013, when you start to see SEO emerging as more of a mainstream tactic. It becomes more a fundamental part of marketing. And now the last 5 years, it's really been a mainstay. It might even be one of the biggest practices in digital marketing overall, maybe the biggest practice. And that's so wild to me, right? That you kind of have this massive growth even as the opportunity is plateauing a little bit. So one of the other things that was definitely true is not only did we not have a lot of competition because people weren't investing in it, we were one of the few places that you could go on the web. Maybe there were 10 or 12 websites that offered decent information about how to really do SEO, and we were one of them. And so standing out from that crowd, not that difficult. Today, if you wanted to build
forget about it,
leading blog in SEO, oh my gosh, there's thousands of websites you're competing against, right? It was also the case that a lot of the industry, which was quite small at the time, but a lot of the industry practitioners believed that they had to be secretive in order to hold on to their competitive advantage, right? They believed that if they shared what they knew openly and transparently, everybody would just do it for themselves and they would never get any business. Obviously, the whole concept, the whole idea of content marketing emerged 2009, 10, 11, right? With sort of the Content Marketing Institute and Joe Polizzi and all these people who were developing that concept. But content marketing as a practice kind of started right around then, that you could basically be open and transparent and build in public with your ideas, and that would actually attract business rather than drive people to just do things themselves. And obviously now, for the last 10, 15 years, tons and tons of businesses have been practicing that. But Moz was very early in that space. And so we benefited from that.
And how many, just for us to know, to have a little bit of background in terms of, deconstructive the process of how you build Moz awareness online and in general. How did it start quickly while writing those content? No, in the book, you're really explaining that you spend nights on the blogs, writing and writing and writing. When did it take off? Approximately.
I think the first year or two, it really did very, very little. I was lucky to get 100 visits in a day.
Oh, really?
Blog at all. Yeah. So very, very limited. Most of the promotion, Google had this thing at the time, which they sort of denied for a long time and then sort of came around to the idea, oh yeah, we had that. This thing called the sandbox, at least that's what SEOs called it, where essentially for the first few years or few months, if it was a very fast growing site of a site's existence, it just couldn't rank for anything, wouldn't rank very well for any terms or phrases at all. And so Moz was sort of in that world for its first couple of years. And then I remember one day, I think it was like in the fall of maybe 2004 or 5, all of a sudden, our rankings just jumped up for every keyword. Google had taken us out of the sandbox and we like popped out and started ranking for things. So a lot of the promotion was done by posting to other forums, leaving comments on other people's blog and engaging with them. There was no really social media yet.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So blogs and forums were sort of the only way this was happening. And then we had a big, big success with when I wrote the Beginner's Guide to SEO, right? So I wrote that because there was this, old school magazine that was going to write an article about us. Newsweek magazine, back when it was still in print, when you still get it at the newsstand. And because that article was coming out, I thought, oh, lots of people who don't know anything about SEO are going to come visit our website. So I should write a beginner's guide so that they have something to read. Well, not a lot of people came from a Newsweek article about us, right? That was very, very tiny. But what did happen was that when we published that Beginner's Guide to SEO, a lot of sites wrote about it. They saw it, they read it, they thought it was great, they published it. I think Slashdot was one of the big ones, which was kind of the Reddit of its time. It was like getting on the front page of Reddit. And so that drove a ton of traffic to the Moz blog. And after that, it started picking up some steam. People started to know us and recognize us. I got some invitations to speak at conferences and events, which of course I was terrible at. My first few events, I was awful on stage. But eventually, it's like anything else. You start out, you're terrible. You do it again and again. You practice. You try and improve. You watch people who are great at it. You try and imitate them and learn from their style. And eventually I became a reasonably good speaker. And so now I get, invited to keynote events all over the world, which also drove a lot of Moz's growth over those years. Cause I would go to conferences and events, I'd make relationships with people. They'd ask me to contribute. We'd do whatever it was, we'd do a webinar together or we'd write a guest piece or contribute somehow. And then more links would come to Moz and more people would come and people saw me on stage and they'd go to the website and subscribe to the email. So all of that sort of turned into this flywheel. I definitely need to start a new video series. That's for sure.
That's another of my question, but I kept it for later. But let's talk
Yeah.
about this now. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Whiteboard Friday started as just an experiment. We had got, I can't even remember why we bought a camera. We bought a camera for some reason at the office, right? So just there was 5 or 6 of us working there. We had a camera, and one of the folks I worked with was like, well, let me, as I was explaining some SEO concept, he was like, let me get the camera and we'll try and film it. And we put it on the blog. And the thing that I loved about it was it meant that I didn't have to put up a blog post that day.
Was so
Right?
yeah, so
So
great.
it's just like, oh, what a huge time savings. Like Thursday night, I can take off. I don't have, great. This is awesome. And the Whiteboard Friday was the worst performing blog post we put up every week.
I read that. This is incredible.
Yeah. So, every week, the lowest traffic, lowest number of links, lowest rankings for search phrases, all that stuff, it just did terribly. It was not successful very
Crazy.
much at all. And this was kind of before the era of YouTube taking off and becoming a major thing. So even though the Whiteboard Fridays went on YouTube, we didn't really get subscribers to that. So it was just very poor traffic and visibility. But the people who did see Whiteboard Friday would, and especially those folks who started watching it religiously, every week they watched it.
Yeah.
They became super fans, right? They were, because video is just so much more engaging than text alone. You can read text content on a website for years, dozens or hundreds of articles, and not really even remember or know who the writer is. Right? You just sort of, oh yeah, that was a good piece. I don't know who wrote it. I have no association.
Yeah.
But you watch one person in a video, even a couple of times, and you'll remember them because you see their face and you hear their voice and you see their actions. You start to connect with them. You build real empathy and memory. And so we started seeing that with Whiteboard Friday, and that's what made us decide to continue, even though it was underperforming. And eventually what happened was wild, right? It became like, like anything else with episodic content, you do it over and over and over again, and you get better at it, and you get better at promoting it, and it builds a fan base, and that fan base goes out and promotes it for you. And then this turns into the flywheel that cyclically brings more and more people to that platform. And that's exactly what happened with Whiteboard Friday. So by 2012, 2013, which is what, year 5 or 6, I think Whiteboard Friday started in 2007. By year 5 or 6, it was the top performing blog post every week. And when I left Moz a few years later, it was one of those things where they asked me to come back and do it for another year. And it was a very, very big part of how the marketing engine for Moz worked.
So just one last question about this, because it's so interesting. 5 years of Whiteboard Friday before it took off, but extremely good conversion, or just lots of engagement?
Extremely passionate fans.
Okay, so no
right?
conversion in subscription. No.
Yeah, it didn't contribute well to conversions to the software in the early days. Later on, it definitely did. But what it did was it built up what I would say is a powerful connection between the audience and the host.
Okay.
And that was the driving factor. That's what made me decide, hey, let's keep continuing to invest in it. What's interesting is my suspicion is if it started up today inside of Moz, they'd shut it down very quickly, right? Because the current leadership, the current mindset is much less serendipitous. It's much more metrics driven. So if you make an investment, you're the CEO, you see someone's making an investment, 6 months in, it's not proving its worth, you shut it down.
Yeah.
You're going to stop it, right? This is what's so beautiful about serendipitous kinds of marketing, is that you can decide instead of the leadership, right? You can be like, I think there's something here. I don't care about the metrics right now. I think long-term this is going to work. I'm willing to invest and see what happens. I like doing it. I'm passionate about it. I'm going to get better at it. This is something most metrics-driven organizations are not willing to invest in. I say that this is a very American way of thinking, right? The American way of thinking is very, hyper capitalist. If it doesn't produce
Venture
results, we
backed.
don't do it, right? I think in France things are a little bit different, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot more. I'm passionate about this. I like it. I found an audience of people who care about it and are passionate about it, and I'm going to put my pride into it, and we'll get something wonderful out. Turns out that works really well, even in hypercapitalism. It's just that most Americans, at least, are not willing to invest for the long term. So there is no one answer.
I know.
Absolutely. I will tell you right now, at my new company, right? I'm very well known for SEO. Obviously, I was pretty good at it, right?
To say the
I could do a
least.
good job. I invest almost nothing in SEO today with SparkToro.
Wow.
And that is despite the fact, that we're, trying to build a big business and doing it in a space that would seem to be conducive to search engine optimization. And the reason that we're not investing almost anything at all is because people don't search for what we do. And if people don't search for what you do, there's no point in ranking for a bunch of keywords and optimizing a bunch of content and creating that content. You instead need to go about your marketing in a different way. And so what my sense is that SEO makes a lot of sense in two stages, right? One where that tons of people are already searching for exactly what you have to offer, and that if you ranked for those words and phrases and they saw you high in the results and clicked on you, they would be likely to become customers now or soon, and that you would get a return on investment from that. That's one of the cases. And the second is if you're a very mature business and you've built up a big brand, you almost certainly have a ton of uncaptured SEO opportunity if you haven't already invested, even if that's just for things like your brand name and the brand names of your products and the things you talk about. Because if you do just basic technical SEO types of things and basic content production and visibility and keyword research and those kinds of things, you'll find a lot of opportunities, low-hanging fruit opportunities. So a good example of this is, I think this company is well known even in France, Airbnb.
Yeah, sure.
So Airbnb, when they started, they spent no effort at all for years. I think it was 6 or 7 years. They didn't spend one iota of effort on SEO. They never tried to rank for vacation homes, vacation rentals, none of it. They focused exclusively on brand, building the marketplace, appealing to people who wanted to rent out their homes, appealing to people. And then I think it was maybe they started in 06 or 07. I'm trying to remember. I met the founders a long time ago at one of the Y Combinator events. And we had a long car ride. They gave me a lift to my hotel and we were talking about SEO, right? And they're explaining to me, like, well, we're not sure if we want to invest yet. And of course, I was telling them, no, you have to invest in SEO. It's so important. Well, they were right. I was wrong, right? What ended up being the right decision for them was build the brand first, build the demand first, become influential through other sources, get covered by, TV and radio and print media and every online publication and, build up this sort of social following. All that type of stuff worked incredibly well for them. And then many years later, I think 7 or 8 years into the business, they started making destination pages, ranking for those destination pages. Now, if you search for, whatever it is, vacation rental home, Tuscany, you'll find Airbnb. But they didn't even try for a long time. So when I say it depends, it really, really depends. If you are, a local yoga studio, it probably makes sense to try and rank for yoga studio plus your town name. That is a very reasonable goal. Should you create a page about every different kind of yoga? Maybe every kind that you offer, potentially. That could be a reasonable way to go. If you are building up a new kind of exercise program that's never been searched for before, right? You've invented it. I don't know, you created CrossFit or you created, I can't even remember what the PX90, something like, whatever it is. If you are the creator, should you focus on SEO or brand? I'd probably go with brand marketing.
Okay, so brand marketing. So technically I would say today, maybe not 10 years ago, it would be choosing the tough way because it means that going out and look out for, first of all, maybe outside of online world, who would talk about your new niche, your product, your community, building your community through media coverage. And that's phrases that you use, searching for the amplifiers. I love this one. Definitely. So, okay, that's where probably SparkToro would enter, right?
Yeah, I mean, so SparkToro is very much in this world of help me discover the sources of influence for my audience.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what they read, what they watch, what they follow, what they pay attention to, what they listen to and subscribe to, what words and phrases they talk about, topics that are of interest to them. That sort of marketing, and obviously, SparkToro is not the only way to do that. You can interview your audience, you can survey them, you can sort of manually follow them around the internet and see what they do. But understanding where that audience pays attention already is oftentimes easier in a lot of sectors than going to Google and trying to outrank everybody. And the reason for that is Google has become so incredibly competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Google themselves often puts their own results, at the top of the search results. They're trying to answer in more and more searches with instant answers, right? That have that 0-click search problem that I talk about, that I've done some research about. And if you are attempting to get people to know you and like you and trust you and look for you in particular, rather than search for, I think the Airbnb example is really good here. Would I rather have 10 people every month searching for Airbnb or 100 people every month searching for vacation rentals and clicking on my website?
For sure. Yeah.
I would take the branded search traffic. I want them searching for me, not for the generic term. And so building up that, through brand marketing, through sort of what I've called influence with no R, influence marketing, right? That digital PR, those kinds of tactics can really win the day. Yeah, so the way that I think about influence in general, right, is that there's a strong misconception. I think that started a few years ago with like the rise of the influencer, right? The person on YouTube or Instagram with lots and lots of followers, and usually, they have 6-pack abs and they're very strong, whatever.
Half naked,
And they don't wear
usually,
much
yeah.
clothing, right?
Yeah.
But that kind of person may have influence over a large number of people, potentially, yes or no, but the relevance of that influence and the composition of the audience does not fit with what most marketers' goals are. So if you are if you're one of the top 50 consumer product goods, CPG companies in the world, yeah, what you're really looking for is a substitute for television advertising. You just sort of want to reach, broad demographic group. We want to reach everyone. We're trying to sell our candy bar. Fine. So Mars Company or Nestle or whoever it is, fine. Influencer, the classic, 6-pack, take off my shirt type of guy. Fine. You go spend money with them. But if I am trying to sell my local yoga studio, it doesn't make sense, right? What percent of that person's followers are even in my region? What percent of them could even become my customers? What percent of that person's followers care about yoga? Instead, the way I want to think about influence is, these are the people that I want to influence, right? This group, however big or small they are, who and what do they pay attention to? So it's starting from the audience, not the influencer. I don't want to start from the influencer. I think that's
I like that so
madness
much.
in a way. You want to start from the audience. Tell me what podcasts they listen to. Tell me what YouTube channels they subscribe to. Tell me what webinars they attend. Tell me which email newsletters they subscribe to. Tell me who they follow on social, what websites they visit. That's what I care about. I don't care about being, whatever, on in front of 10 million people. I care about being in front of 9,000 people who are my exact customer targets. And this is the way I think that my co-founder and I kind of conceptualize influence marketing and the smart kinds of digital PR that you can do. And that's what we wanted to make SparkToro do, right? The whole idea behind SparkToro, the big innovation, it's not that big of an innovation. It's just percent of the audience you described that follows the source in the database.
I love that.
There's no fancy AI or machine learning or anything like that. It's division, right? It's just, you have these 9,000 people who care about yoga in Rennes, France. Great. Ta-da. This is what they follow. This is what they listen to.
Okay. I love that. Really, I really buy that so much, because this is leading to many confusion today. What I like the most, to be honest, is that when I hear you talk about both SEO and now SparkToro, Moz, and everything, really your keywords is transparency. Because what motivates you very much with SEO was being transparent, being done with Google secrets about SEO, dark box, and whatever. And now it's really being also transparent with, I love what you say often when you're giving interviews and stuff. Stop spending random dollars into Facebook ads or Google ads, and just trying to focus much more on, small targeted audience, and exactly what you describe. I love that so much. This is really your stuff, huh? Transparency, right?
I think, I'm not sure I've ever thought about it that way, but I think you're absolutely right? A big part of why I love this kind of marketing, why I love doing SEO back in the day, why I loved content marketing, is to make something that felt difficult to understand, difficult to invest in, poorly optimized, to make those things clear, to make them obvious, and uncovering that that data, that information in this world that sort of has all these incentives to keep it secret. I mean, Google and Facebook in particular, they keep pulling back data, right? So that you can't get it, so that advertisers and marketers can't get it. Sometimes it's under the guise of privacy protection. Sometimes it's under the guise of, oh, well, we're doing this for our customers or our users, when in fact, they're just doing it to protect their monopoly power. And my sense is that if we, as small businesses, early stage companies, startups and scale-ups, invest more intelligently in marketing channels and tactics of all kinds, if we build up resilience, we don't have to have that reliance, that exclusive reliance on these big tech giants. And I don't think they're a force for good in the world. I don't think many people do anymore. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever used it, but I took a spin of HubSpot's Persona Builder. They have an online tool that kind of walks you through building your own persona. It's not terrible, because it sort of lets you build your own custom system or what have you. But I kept thinking to myself, oh my gosh, how amazing would it be if you could build a persona or build audience research through SparkToro in the same way. You build up the elements. Okay, well, I'm really interested in demographic data. So let me put some demographic data distributions into my, my market research model, my avatar or persona or whatever it is for this. So I like that idea a lot. The big challenge for us, as you know, we're only two people.
I know.
There's only the two of us. So yes, I would love to, I think, overhaul a little bit of people's thinking about market research broadly, and provide some better ways of thinking about how to do this. My big challenge with personas is I feel like they are stereotypes. I feel like they're just these simple models of a single fake human being. And when you as a product builder or a marketer or a CEO or an executive, a finance person, when you try and optimize toward a stereotype, you're going to encounter big problems, right? You're going to build for a person who doesn't really exist and is not truly representative of your audience. You know, I get so worried when I see, for example, someone say, oh, well, our audience, you know, it looks like from our market research, our audience is 54% women and 46% men. So we are going to make a persona who's a woman. I kind of have this like, well, I look, that's fine. I'm glad you have those numbers. That's great. But that 4% difference, does that really mean that you want to over optimize and over index toward the 54% instead of the 46%? I don't think that makes a lot of sense. And of course, this gets really problematic and really terrible when you start to do this in, you know, large groups with, you know, in countries and regions where, oh, well, only 10% of people in our audience are disabled, so we're not going to build anything for disabled folks. What?
No, it doesn't make sense.
You know, like you are excluding this audience who doesn't deserve that, right? That's a terrible thing to do. Or you're stereotyping, you're saying, well, you know, most of our audience is whatever, there are Black Americans, so we are going to over-index on that. Ooh, that gets really problematic when you start to stereotype and try to pander, and I don't like any of that type of marketing. I would much prefer to see market research be about the topics that people are interested in and the content that they care about and are sharing, and what they're following and listening to and watching and reading and how they behave. Those kinds of things are far more interesting to me than sort of surface level identity elements, which I think are just a holdover from the pre-internet era, you know, sort of the Mad Men era of, well, this magazine reaches mostly, I don't know, white Americans in the Midwest, so that's where we're going to advertise or not. Let's see. So I think it is reasonable for some businesses to prioritize other marketing channels first and invest in SEO later.
Yeah, like what you did,
I don't think there will be many businesses for the very long term, especially businesses that build up, that can ignore SEO permanently, or they'll lose out to competitors who do. And that's just because Google has built itself as the primary way that we navigate the internet, right? So, you know, if you are Airbnb and you do absolutely no SEO whatsoever, you leave yourself open for competitors to come in and take your rankings, even for branded search types of traffic, if you are unwilling or unable to make those investments. And we've seen companies who've struggled because they were unwilling to make those SEO investments. So I would not ignore it entirely. I do think what's true is it's going to keep getting more and more competitive. It's going to and more difficult. There's going to be more and more practitioners, at least for the next 4 or 5 years. There's going to be more and more people practicing SEO, which means more people who are doing the work that you're competing against for the, you know, jobs and attention and all those kinds of things. But I suspect it's going to keep growing because I don't think it's a saturated field yet. You know,
really?
there's very few colleges and universities that teach SEO, almost none, right? And almost none well. There's still way more jobs out there than there are people who have, you know, 2 to 5 years of experience in SEO, which is why so many people can get a job in search engine optimization, even whatever, right out of college or without even going to college, right? It's a great growth field for that. What I do think is other areas of digital marketing are being ignored because SEO is so big and because Google is so big. So, you know, Facebook ads and Facebook marketing is probably doing pretty decently well, Instagram as well. But there's a lot of kinds of marketing, from, you know, PR to email marketing to, frankly, the content strategy and non-SEO focused side of content marketing. influence, our marketing, all that type of stuff that is being underinvested in, and I think will present more opportunities for people who are creative with their skills and use those sorts of things. So I think it's funny, SEO kind of started as the underdog. Now it's become, the big player, and I think it's going to keep growing for a while. But I suspect there's a lot of these other tactics and channels that are now becoming the underdog, where they could produce pretty spectacular results if you're willing to invest. So, I mean, certainly, yes, like that's one of the big goals of SparkToro. And there's a whole tab for press that shows press sources. But I think one of the problems that you bring up is this idea that a lot of startup founders have, that if media publications in the technology and startup and venture capital worlds write about you, talk about you, put you on stage, build up your brand, that this will somehow help you reach customers. And it's just not true, right? It's even less true today than it was 10 or 15 years ago when there was a more consolidated media, right? So being in the New York Times technology section, being on the front page of TechCrunch, it will potentially bring you traffic. It might bring you a lot of people reaching out, some people saying congratulations, people in your network, a lot of new LinkedIn requests. It'll also bring you a lot of, hey, I want to write for you. Hey, I want to get a job with you. Hey, I want to, like, lots of interesting biz dev type of things. But customers, unless your customers are actually, whatever tech industry, VC industry professionals, it will not bring you no one who is interested in yoga is reading TechCrunch. So if you have some amazing new yoga invention, TechCrunch might cover you, but it will not have the impact that you think it'll have. And this, I think, this is part of sort of a complex web of incentives and structures that is hard to get past. Like as a young entrepreneur, I think a lot of young entrepreneurs feel this way. I wanted attention. I wanted people to pay attention to me. I wanted them to think that I was important and worthwhile and
worthy of attention.
Yeah, impressive and like somebody worth following. And that's a pride thing, right? I want prestige, I want pride, I want to be put on stage. But that is a very different goal than I want my company to succeed and help its customers. I want to attract more people who need our product. I want to be profitable and grow and be able to sustain this business long term. Those things are completely disconnected. And so I think when you are facing this challenge, you just have to go in knowing that this ecosystem, that the technology venture capital ecosystem is designed to make you feel like you are not worthy and you are not good enough unless you get their blessing. Unless they give you money,
so true.
you're not going to feel good enough, right? And that can leave a big hole in your chest that you're sort of always trying to fill until you get it. And then it's only after you get it that you realize, oh, shit, that did not do anything for making my business better or my customers better or my product better or bringing customers to me or all of the things that I now need to do successfully in order to raise the next round and get the next bit of coverage and avoid being seen. I mean, I think honestly, it is so much better to never raise venture capital or to be rejected than to raise it successfully one or two times, but not become a unicorn. Because
that's exactly,
those stuck in the middle companies, they don't make money for their founders. They don't make money for their employees, right? Everybody's paid under market with the hope that your stock options will someday produce big results. And they almost never do, right? 99 out of 100 VC investments don't return, their expected rate of return for the capital invested. So
that's your situation at Moz.
Sorry?
that's your situation at Moz, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
still have
exactly. Right. So
18%.
Moz might be a $50 million a year company that's profitable and throwing off $5 million in revenue a year. And it might be growing, but it's growing too slowly to be able to sort of get to IPO stage, and the metrics aren't quite IPO worthy. And so it's stuck there, and it's not getting acquired by anyone because there's very few other companies in the space who are very big who would want to acquire it. So it's just this asset that might someday be worth something, but likely might be worth nothing. And investors have put what, 30 some odd million dollars into that business. So it's got to make a ton of money. Those investors really are not going to be happy with an outcome under $300 million. How's Moz going to get there? It's a real struggle.
And you never wanted to stay and try to find a way to help this growth, because you still have 18% of the company, and it's a killer that it makes so much money and that you don't even see it. That is crazy. I mean, it's a beautiful testimony what you did with your book. I wish I had read this 10 years ago, but okay, now it's here, so let's help. And you never wanted to do this?
I absolutely wanted to do that. And I think that I realized that once I stepped down from the CEO role, I no longer had the ability to do that. And so the best thing I could do was move on.
Okay.
Right? Just sort of accept the fact that I can no longer influence that trajectory and leave it in the hands of other people. And that is, that's their decision to make, right? If, yeah.
Anyway, focus on SparkToro.
I'm in a way, it is a very frustrating thing from a, sort of financial standpoint that it is where it is. But at the same time, Karine, I don't need to be, a multimillionaire with, I don't know, a mansion and a pool and fancy cars. Like, I don't need any of that stuff. What does make me very happy is thinking that my work might help a lot of other people. And so I think the work I did at Moz helped a lot of other people.
Oh, for
I'm
sure.
hopeful that the work I can do at SparkToro can help a lot of people in a different way.
For sure.
Yeah, that would make me feel really good. I would love it if SparkToro's, independent financing model caught on, because, our success sort of showed to other people, oh, I can invest this way and have a successful outcome. I think it's possible. It's actually quite possible that the United States will implement some serious capital gains tax, advancements, and that those sorts of progressive taxation will make SparkToro's funding much more appealing in the future than the classic venture model for a lot of angel investors. That would be super exciting too, right? So there's just, venture capital only really exists because it's a tax dodge. Oh man.
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to try and go lightning round with these. So marketing to me is anything that you do to grow your awareness, your likability, your trust, personal, professional, individual, or organizational, to an audience. So very broad. I think a leader, a leader is someone who has a position of authority over others that can be given through democratic or undemocratic means, and a good leader has an obligation to put the people that they lead first.
Wow, I like this one.
That is a big obligation, and so a marketing leader is often thought of as a CMO, but in my opinion, many individual marketers, many consultants and agency leaders are also marketing leaders, many thought leaders and influential people in the space are marketing leaders. And I think this just means to have that influence and authority and that obligation to see to others, see to the benefit and welfare of others before your own in the marketing space. Does that always happen? I kind of think it happens more in marketing than in a lot of other spaces, which is one of the reasons I love marketing. I think there are a lot of people who care deeply about others. I think this is just how marketing is. In order to be great at marketing, you need empathy. You must be able to put yourself in the shoes of other people so that you can reach them and influence them and sell to them and earn their awareness and trust. And therefore, there's a strong correlation between people who care about other people and marketers. So I love this field.
That's amazing. You answered my other question. Which type of skills should a marketing leader have? But you tell us empathy. That's amazing.
Work, if you can, imagine yourself as someone else and picture why they behave the way that they do, why they feel the thoughts that they do, why they are challenged with the problems that they're challenged with, and what that must be like for them. The more you can do that, the better you can make your marketing, your products, your communication, your messaging, your positioning, your copy, all of it.
I love that. It's amazing. One word, one quote, one book to summarize it all.
Oh, one word, one quote.
Maybe one book only, just to see if there is one that really, was important to you.
That I absolutely love. It's not even about marketing, but this book from Liz Fosslien and Molly West Duffy is called No Hard Feelings, and it is spectacular. So they do some really clever comics and illustrations in the book, and it is all about sort of bringing your emotions and feelings to your professional life.
Wow.
In a way that is productive and also therapeutic. And I found this book just amazing. I know it's generally designed for like teams and people who are managers and that kind of stuff. I love it even as an individual contributor. French butter is the best thing in the world. I know everybody is crazy about Irish butter. They think Irish butter is great. I think French butter is the best butter you can find in the whole world. This is just my opinion. No offense to Italy, no offense to Ireland, but French butter it is for me. Also, there's a brand of there's a few French clothing brands that I absolutely love. Like I think they're just amazing, and I can't get them here in the United States. I think there's a lot of I love this about France and French businesses in general. This is true of several European countries, but in France in particular, I find that there are a lot of businesses who feel that they have enough. Do you know what I mean? Like,
so much. That is so true.
We are satisfied. We have enough of the market. We have enough growth. We have enough customers. We have enough money. We don't need to, conquer the American market, conquer the British market, whatever it is. They feel good about what they've got. I wish I could export that. How do we take that idea of enough and bring that to other places? Because I think the worst part of American culture is, look, the United States has some good things going for it, but there is just this relentless pursuit of more, that nothing is ever good enough. And that's why we have all these people who are, just worshiping billionaires and don't want more taxes, don't want more social programs, because they
don't want social security.
Yeah, right. I mean, our healthcare system is just
terrible,
awful. My God,
terrible.
I agree. Being sick in the United States is the scariest thing in the world. It is, it is worse than many underdeveloped countries, and that's just horrifying. Just horrifying. So that's what I'd like to take from France if I can. If you could just send some of that psychology our way.
Yeah, we're going to do enough.org instead of inbound.org. I think it's going to be a good one.
I love it. I love it. Send some butter, send some croissant.